Welcome to the JCPS MTSS training on the Classroom Systems Toolkit with a focus on the how you'll practice student-teacher relationships. I am Melissa Loxton, MTSS Engagement Resource Teacher with Elementary Zone 3.
Hi, I'm April Bemker, MTSS Engagement Resource Teacher with the Accelerated Improvement Schools, or AIS Zone, working with middle and high schools.
Please take a moment to type the case-sensitive bit.ly into your web browser. This will allow you access to all the links offered throughout the presentation. Here you will see the 6 components that make up the MTSS department or multi-tiered systems of support. MTSS focuses on overall school improvement by aligning resources and support for both teachers and students. We provide multiple levels of support for learners that address academic, social, emotional, and behavioral needs, and produce professional development that is aligned with schools and the district as a whole. Let me start by showing you the components of our department. Multi-tiered systems of support, known as MTSS. This concept map shows a visual of the departments within MTSS. The MTSS academic department provides teachers with Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention and academic support. This department is headed by Donna Lawson. The MTSS behavior department, led by Sandra Hensel, support schools in implementing school-wide behavior systems and frameworks, including PBIS and restorative practices. The MTSS re-engagement department supports students who are transitioning back to their home schools from Minor Daniels Academy and Breckenridge Metropolitan. The goal of our department, the MTSS engagement department, is to increase student achievement by equipping teachers with high-yield pedagogical practices to maximize student engagement. Both the MTSS engagement and re-engagement departments are led by Dr. Naomi Brahim. The point of contact for each department is located in the concept map. Here are the 6 MTSS toolkits. By clicking the toolkit image, you will access the MTSS department webpage and each toolkit. Before we jump into definitions and strategies for developing positive student-teacher relationships, let's discuss how this high-yield practice is critical for re-engagement and acceleration. Research says for schools to prioritize the most effective practices supported by evidence. It further states to align those practices with 2 domains, social, emotional, and behavior growth, and high leverage academic instruction, which is our focus area for today. One of the practices that is critical for re-engagement and acceleration, based on research, is to build relationships with students, among peers, and with families through purposeful communication and provide structured opportunities for interactions to promote connections. Throughout this presentation, we will be sharing research, strategies, and considerations that will help schools with this essential high-leverage practice. Classroom systems that support student behavior use academic and behavior data to put short and long-term supports in place to help students be successful. When we think about student-teacher relationships, we are referring to an aspect of classroom systems designed to help students strengthen their sense of belonging. A classroom culture where student-teacher interactions are positive makes for a successful student-teacher relationship. When thinking about student-teacher relationships, a teacher who creates a positive climate will have higher effects on student achievement. Teachers have the majority of the responsibility for the quality of relationships with students. Today, we will learn ways to create a classroom environment that promotes positive student-teacher relationships to re-engage students. We know we will accomplish this by being able to identify new ways to develop and/or improve relationships with students to accelerate learning. Take a few seconds to think about ways you create positive relationships with your students. After years of extensive research on student learning, Dr. John Hattie found that the relationships teachers share with their students have a greater effect on their academic growth than socioeconomic status, professional development, class size, or any type of special programs. It was not that these other things were not important, but that the teacher-student relationship had more impact on students' learning outcomes. Research shows that a positive student-teacher relationship is essential for successful learning. Teachers must create an environment that is favorable for learning. It is what the teacher does, not how they feel, that dictates how the student perceives the relationship. If the student-teacher relationship is strong, instructional strategies used by the teacher seem to be more effective. There are higher levels of student engagement when there is a positive relationship. Positive student-teacher relationships are fostered and maintained when there is effective communication, fair expectations, students are held accountable, students are involved in determining aspects of classroom management and organization, and when there is a willingness to address issues that strain the relationship.
As you watch this video, watch for different strategies used to develop student relationships.
You had so much to offer yesterday. You okay?
I'm tired.
So what's going on?
Strong relationships are central to the learning process. What the science of learning and development tells us is that we need to create learning environments which allow for strong, long-term relationships for children to become attached to school and to the adults and other children in it.
When children have experiences of closeness and consistency and trust, oxytocin is released. Oxytocin has many, many positive effects on the development of the brain. So when we think about a relationship, we're not just talking about being nice to a child. We're talking about a child having an experience of attunement and trust strong enough to release the hormone oxytocin.
Good morning, Ariella. How you doing today?
The purpose of the morning greeting is to connect with them and to just make sure that I'm seeing them as humans. Like I'm making that relationship with them, making that bond.
I prioritize relationship building because getting to know them is the best part of the job.
When I come in the morning, we usually talk about things that are happening in our community.
We're trying to build caring and respect.
The teacher is trying to understand who I am and my values as a person.
When I have a free 45 minutes or an hour, I think to myself, I could sit down and catch up on grading, or I could go and make connections, whether it's a smile or a joke or a reminder. It validates their presence in the building.
Rock it out in the art room. It starts from so much honesty and transparency with kids.
It's really easy to strive to be this like idealized, always ready to go elementary school teacher, and that's not real and that's not human. When people start talking about other things while I'm still giving directions, it feels frustrating for me and I have to take a breath. My students connect most with me when they see that I also struggle and I also have challenges. It takes a lot of vulnerability on my part.
Total familiarity. When that student knows that you care about them, when they know that you're a human, let's think about that. Their academic performance in your class is going to be better.
If I'm comfortable around them, then I'm more confident around them, and it's easier to ask questions and things like that.
So when you're looking at this graph, what is it that you think happened?
Some teachers I don't always get along with the best, so then sometimes I'm like, I can't do it, so I'm just not going to do it. But when I like the teacher, I want to do their work. I'll be like, I can learn this.
You all have done outstanding work.
Emotion and learning are completely connected. If you're in a positive emotional space, if you feel good about yourself, your teacher, that actually opens up the opportunity for more learning.
Good to see. You had so much to offer us.
The video emphasized that strong relationships are integral to the learning process, and students who feel safe and supported are more likely to perform better academically. Continually working on positive relationships by making connections with your students and being vulnerable with them is key to re-engagement and accelerated learning. Research supports 3 keys to caring student-teacher relationships: having warmth for your students and accepting them for who they are, feeling empathy, understanding how your students think and feel, and taking time to be there for your students. When teachers and students have a warm and caring relationship, the students show greater levels of school adjustment for even years later and achieve at a higher level. What are some strategies for building positive relationships that support re-engaging students and accelerating learning? We've included 3 in the black box on this slide that can be used with both in-person or virtual instruction. One is to learn names quickly and correctly. And one way to do that is to have students take turns giving a brief introduction, where you have 1 or 2 students that could go at the beginning of the class and a couple more at the end of the class until everyone has had a turn. You also want to use student names often to help you remember them. Another strategy is to get to know your students through student questionnaires, having students write letters or autobiographies, or allow time for either a show and tell or an all about me bag. For an all about me bag, the student puts a certain number of items that represent them in a bag, and they share those items with the class and tell them why they're important to who they are. Also, be sure to say hello and goodbye to your students every day, and if in person, be at the door at the beginning and end of class to do this individually. And we saw that in the video. Another strategy to build stronger relationships when re-engaging with your students, which also helps to accelerate learning, is to post student pictures and work. It's important to change your posted material often. There are many different ways to create displays to share either in the classroom or virtually. One idea that works for both in-person or virtual instruction is to send a weekly newsletter or email to parents and students. And in that, you can include pictures and student work. It's a very powerful tool to foster stronger relationships with not only elementary age students, but middle and high school students as well. Finding small ways to connect with students often and let them know or let them have a voice is another relationship building strategy. There are many ways, both in person and virtual, to accomplish this, such as having spirit days where you and students dress according to a theme, holding weekly office hours where students can talk to you one-on-one, or taking a little time to play a game or read a book aloud together. You can also utilize reflection activities where you allow students to share things through journal prompts, making lists such as 10 things that make you smile, drawing pictures, or having brief check-ins. These can all help facilitate re-engaging students. Some additional strategies to help build better student relationships that re-engage students and accelerate learning are listed on this slide, including having high expectations for all your students, showing them that you'll never give up on them and that you'll advocate for them, being vulnerable with your students, as we saw in the video, and helping them see that mistakes are okay, and displaying mutual respect. You can also attend outside events to support your students and seek family input as needed. As you watch this video, listen for ways to continue to maintain positive relationships with your students, especially during distance learning.
All right, my name is Paul Van Stratum, and I teach 9th and 10th grade integrated mathematics. To maintain my student-teacher relationships in an online learning environment, I mainly sent checkup emails, calls home, during Zoom meetings, and even some text messages. I always started my Zoom meetings with a few social emotional questions. So I'd ask students how their day was, how their family is, how their pets were doing, and even like their friends or shows we both liked and enjoyed. And we had some good conversation about that. But what I mainly tried to do was to ask follow-up questions so that they knew I was listening, that I cared, to show them that I was interested in their individual lives within school and outside of school. While I was tutoring, I found out that I really enjoyed being their biggest cheerleader and their biggest fan. I focused on those small successes, mainly their thought processes, not so much right or wrong answers. And I would give them physical rounds of applause and bell sounds like they're winning a game show. And I would also call and text parents to highlight students in math and in other subjects as well. For example, one of my students was the best in California in a reading comprehension application. And when I sent him this image verifying that he was one of the most successful students in the state of California, we had an amazing moment where he was so proud of himself. And I made sure to tell him that he should be proud of himself because he did the work. So all these little things add up, and all these little things make a big difference in maintaining great student-teacher relationships in an online learning environment.
Some takeaways from the video about ways to maintain student-teacher relationships during distance learning include: check in regularly with your students via email, phone, or Google Meets. Don't just ask about instruction, but take time to ask socio-emotional questions as well. Take time to celebrate your students and be their biggest cheerleader. Reach out to families to share something positive and highlight students. In any classroom, the teacher should be aware of certain considerations regarding the environment or learning community that they are helping to create. Knowing the backgrounds or cultural norms for students within the classroom will lead to more engaging and effective instructional practice. This culturally responsive approach should be utilized to reach as many students as possible in the classroom and foster positive student-teacher relationships to re-engage students and accelerate learning. As you're re-engaging students, be sure to make all students feel welcomed and appreciated and be responsive to their cultural identity. Establish and maintain positive relationships with your students through an equity lens to help remove any barriers for learning. In classrooms where ECE students are present, use of strategies to develop strong positive relationships with your students should be utilized more often based upon the needs of the learners there. As supported by research we mentioned earlier in this presentation, more positive student-teacher relationships are associated with higher levels of student engagement in the short and long term, impacting a variety of factors, including attendance, academic grades, and fewer disruptive behaviors. Increased use of the strategies presented earlier will facilitate re-engaging and accelerating learning for all students, including ECE and English language learners. By working to develop strong relationships with your students, you create a collaborative classroom climate where students feel empowered to be more independent and take a more active role in their learning process, which are all key when considering project-based learning, or PBL. These positive relationships facilitate the occurrence of deeper learning, which will be essential to re-engage students and accelerate learning.
We will leave you with 2 quotes to reflect on. Teddy Roosevelt said, "People won't care how much you know until they know how much you care." Maya Angelou said, "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." Thank you for joining us to learn more about student-teacher relationships. For more information about the MTSS Toolkits and other high-yield practices, please visit our website.